Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, From Tactics to Telemetry, Bridging the Red-Blue Gap. My name is May Zidane from MBCom Marketing Team. I'm delighted to be your host. Please, before we begin, make sure your microphones are muted during our session, and you can use the chat box at any time to drop your questions. We will have dedicated time at the end for the Q&A. This session is recorded and it will be shared with you later. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Danny John, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at MBCom, and he will walk us through today's topic. Over to you, Danny.
Thank you, Mai. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. So my name is Danny. I'm a Senior Solution Engineer with MBCom Broadcom, looking after carbon black products. So today's basically the agenda is to give you an understanding on what are the tactics and techniques what red teams basically use, and how efficiently carbon black products can basically provide you that telemetry information. So we are just trying to bridge the gap between the red team and the blue team. So red team, let that be an adversary, and blue team is going to be the SOC specialist basically. So we will also see basically threat emulation. So the red team tool which is going to be used is the MITRE Caldera. Many of you are aware about it. And we will be demonstrating masquerading defensivation. Defensivation is going to be the tactic which I'm going to focus today more. Looking at the geopolitical situations, I thought let's focus on that tactic basically. So we are not going to cover on any other tactic. We will be focusing on defensivation specifically today, and how effectively the detections and incident response can be delivered through carbon black products. So we will try to touch base the carbon black cloud EDR and the on-premise EDR, and you would see some response remediation actions which we can perform from these solutions basically. Okay, so I will try my best to have a short demo on what we are talking about, but most of the screenshots are actually taken from the demo. So we will see how it goes based on the time. So yeah, so we are going to start from tactics to telemetry, bridging the red-blue gap. So what this session is I'm trying to portray is that what attackers actually execute, right? So it can be a red team or it can be an advisory. What are they executing? How are they executing these things? And what defenders like a SOC analyst can basically observe from their platform. So here in this webinar, we are going to use Caldera as an offensive tool, and Carbon Black as a visibility and a defensive tool basically. Okay, so what are the visibility? Okay, what are the telemetry we are going to see on the Carbon Black solutions, and how we can improve our incident response with this with this activities basically. Okay, so again, as I told you, the tool which I'm going to use is Caldera. It is an open source tool for threat emulations from MITRE itself. So if you go to Caldera website, you have information on how this tool can be used. So again, this is only for what you say, illustrative purpose. We are not supposed to do it on any live environment. So this is for learning purpose, how red teams are basically using this tool. There are multiple tools what red teams done, Metasploit, or you name it. There are a lot of tools which they use. So this tool is pretty simple. It has all the tactics and techniques properly mapped towards MITRE, which is kind of the golden standard nowadays. And the visibility tool, as I told you, it is going to be the on-premise Carbon Black on-premise EDR and the Carbon Black Cloud Enterprise EDR. So Enterprise EDR is a SaaS-based solution, and we also have an on-premise EDR as part of our offering. Okay. So now we are trying to perform some steps to generate the events. So again, most of the antivirus solutions can understand the Caldera agent actually as a malicious payload. So if you're doing your testing, if you want to test the efficacy of your solution, or if you're kind of generating some kind of events for your demos or POCs, yep, make sure that the antivirus components are disabled uh, during the time the agent is being installed. So there is a Caldera agent, what you install on the endpoint, and you run your tactics on that particular endpoint. So in order to install the agent and for the agent to come online, you have to make sure that your countermeasure, any antivirus, either you give an exclusion during your testing or just disable that and then proceed with the installation of it. So here I have the Carbon Black Cloud on my endpoint, and I've put that particular machine on a monitoring policy so that the agent installation is not affected. So here as you can see, it is basically a Sandcat agent. So when you try to deploy the agent, you will see this in the demo. When you try to deploy the agent, you can deploy it on multiple flavors of operating systems. So here I'm trying to use Windows. Windows is my endpoint, so I'm going to download the Windows agent. So by default, the name given for this agent is Splunk. So here itself, you can see that it's something like a masquerading. Okay, so directly itself, it's Splunk is a very known good service from Splunk, but we are trying to do some kind of masquerading, tricking the countermeasure solutions on our endpoint to kind of bypass it actually. So here in anyways, it won't get bypassed if you have an AV. So just make sure that it is disabled, or else you should have some scripting or something done to go ahead and bypass that, which is not advisable, right? Because this is just for a demonstration purpose. You're not doing any offensive stuff on any environment. So in our example, what we are going to use is I have renamed this Splunk to 789.exe. So in the coming slide, everything, we will be focusing on 789.exes, which is basically the implant over here. So we will talk about what is an implant in the coming slides. So that is my Caldera dashboard. So I have gone ahead and deployed an agent. Now the agent is actually, it is live. So if you see over here, it is live. And if I go ahead and do a process search for that particular number, I can see that that is my process. Okay, so 789 is there, and I have a process ID. So basically telling that that agent is basically running on the endpoint. You will have difficulty in deploying the agent itself if there is an antivirus, because that particular payload would directly get deleted, right? So that is one thing. And very important thing, if you're doing your testing to check your efficacy, is that the agent always does not maintain persistence. So what I mean to say by that is, if you go ahead and put the machine on a sleep mode, or if you're restarting the machine, you ideally would see the agent status getting dead, which means that you have to do a reinstallation of the agent every time when you're doing a testing, or else there is some different script which you can actually run to maintain that persistence for the agent, so that the agent never goes to a dead stage. It is always alive. Okay, so as you know, it is agent server. You need to have the agent to basically run for any of the tactic to be run from the management server actually. Okay, so here you are seeing the Caldera interface. You have deployed the agent over here, and as I told you, the most interesting geopolitical thing now is defensivation. I'm not going to cover on any of the other tactics. We are definitely going to focus on the defensivation for this particular webinar. So that I'm also trying to map every tactic and every technique towards a MITRE framework, a number. So most of my demo tactics or techniques which I performed, I have tried to map it with the corresponding MITRE codes actually. Okay, so we are going to look at the defensivation part over here. Now, yeah, so that's it. So after you install the Caldera agent is the red team agent which we are using over here. You can have, there are two different agents which you can deploy from Caldera. It is based on what team you are in. So if you're doing a red team activity, you can go ahead and deploy the red team tool, or if you're on a blue team activity, you can go ahead and deploy the blue team agent actually. So in this purpose, we already have tools for our blue team, which is the Carbon Black. So this particular tool, we are using it for the red team activity. So as you can see over here, we are going to run the defense evasion tactic on the machines, on that particular machine where the agent is there. And you basically do it through an operation. So once you install the agent, you will see a section on Caldera where you can have an operation. Okay, so go ahead and click on that corresponding tab, and then go ahead and select defense evasion as the adversary. Now, these are all pre-populated defense evasions. If you want to go ahead and create your custom defense evasions, it is absolutely possible. So you just go ahead and create your custom adversary and then select it over here. So I am for this particular webinar, I'm using a pre-populated adversary, and that is defense evasion. Okay. Now, if you see over here, I have run some abilities, or as I tell you, some techniques. So there are techniques under the tactics, right? So tactic is defense evasion, and the techniques what we are going to follow, seeing over here, is avoiding logs, prevent PowerShell history. It is doing defense evasion. It is trying to disable the defender. It is trying to get full access to perform a RUIC ransomware style infection, right? So it is trying to do that. It is doing some PowerShell triaging, again, log clearing. These are all very common, techniques which the adversaries actually perform to hide themselves, right? So they perform all the activity, they hide themselves, they clear the traces. And if you can see over here, more defense evasion techniques like disabling the defender, right? Windows attributes, it's trying to modify Windows attributes. It is trying to do file extension masquerading. So we are going to see what all types of techniques are being run in this. So all these techniques, what you are seeing over here, I will be showing you the corresponding results on the blue team, how we are analyzing that actually on the Carbon Black EDR solution. Okay, so all these things you perform from Caldera, you generate the events, and then from now onwards, you are going to see everything from a blue team perspective. Okay, so here are all those techniques which has been run under the defense evasion tactic. Now, as I told you, blue team tool, what we are using over here for threat hunting or incident response is the very well-known Carbon Black EDR solution. Okay, so Carbon Black EDR was ground up build looking at these two factors. One is incident response and threat hunting. So to make the team's life easier by providing you multiple capabilities when it comes to you doing a threat hunting and incident response. So once you run this particular tactic from your red teaming tool, you would immediately see when you log into the console, there are a lot of unresolved alerts which pops up over here. And you can go into the alert triage session where all these particular alerts are actually shown. So these are all unresolved alerts based on the procedures what we did on this particular endpoint. And once you go ahead and understand, once you go ahead and resolve all these things, it is a matter of selecting this particular alert and making sure that you resolve that. So here it is unresolved. Now you come into the alert triage, you're going to go into each and everything what you're observing over here actually. Okay. So let's start with the first and most important thing to have. You can say it as a dropper file, but I would like to say it is an implant. Okay, now here 789.exe is the implant from where the red team is performing its activity. So basically, when I say implanting, it is a primary, it is a sophisticated stealth or a malicious, malicious tool, which is basically used to compromise an endpoint. That is what an implant is. So from that particular implant, you can perform your primary activities like collecting the data or executing commands, or maintaining a C and C persistence communication with your backend server. So you need to have an implant. So for in our example today, 789.exe is the implant, and you can see over here, this is a Carbon Black EDR server. When we deployed the agent from Caldera, Carbon Black EDR server immediately captured that, because any new file creation is basically captured. So you are gonna get uh, that particular payload, which is 789.exe, which is the implant over here, and you can see from here. So that is 789.exe over here, and from there you can see a lot of activities which is already performed. You can see PowerShell executions, command line executions, which is very, very typical of living off the land attacks. Now, this is the most commonly used attacks what we are seeing now. The traditional thing of having a malicious software on your machine, trying to trying to create a worm or a Trojan. All those things are actually coming. It's basically traditional. Now it is living off the land kind of attacks, where they try to get an implant, maintain persistence, use your common administrative tools to masquerade or evade your defenses, because you run PowerShell unless and until your defense solution really have a benchmark on what PowerShell commands you basically run. Because for Symantec, we have something like an adaptive protection, where we take a benchmark of what all PowerShell commands we basically run, right? So it learns, it understands anything other than that. Like, for example, you're going for a bypass or a discovery, which is common things what adversaries use on PowerShells, right? So that is basically flagged, right? So we do have solutions. So if you have your countermeasures, if you have a countermeasure antivirus solution is not able to understand these things, we are definitely in a problem, right? Because we are using all these genuine tools to do all the bad stuff. Now, in the coming slide, we are going to see what exactly is happening. So here, 789.exe got downloaded onto the public folder on my machine. Okay, it established a network communication to the Caldera server. So if you see, I've just masked all the IP addresses over here, because this would be published in a global platform later. So I masked as much as possible. That is the Caldera server, which is a C2 server. And it downloaded this particular implant 789.exe from that server. Now let's get into more details. Okay, so now what you see on this particular slide is it is trying to run net1.exe, and it is trying to add the atomic user onto the machine. So this is a classical adversary technique. Okay, they create secondary users to maintain persistence. This is very classical, and it is basically mapped towards MITRE technique T1136001, create local account. Okay, so from the 789.exe, a command prompt was actually opened up, and then a net.exe command was called, and then onwards net1.exe was called. And if you see over here, it basically tried to create an atomic user on that machine to maintain the persistence. So that is the first thing what the implant did, to create a secondary user. So we have bypassed all those initial discovery thing. We are just purely focusing on the defense evasion tactic. Okay, so in the defense evasion, the first thing is to maintain persistence. They have the secondary user created. So you can see it. The blue team actually understood, yes, there is an implant 789.exe. Now there is a user which is being created. Now you can see PowerShell commands being opened up from the implant. Okay, now this is very, very suspicious. They are trying to do living off the land kind of attack. Now what you basically see is this is the command section. So anything under this is the command section. So basically PowerShell is being called, and we are trying to evade the defenses. So it's trying to disable the real-time monitoring, script scanning, enable control access folder of Microsoft Defender, because this particular tool by default, it tries to stop Microsoft Defender. It does not mean that you cannot perform this efficacy on another AV vendor, you can definitely do that by creating your own scripts. But the default one populates the Microsoft Defender directly. It tried to disable the features of Microsoft Defender. And as a blue team, you can clearly see what exactly that particular implant 789.exe is doing through a PowerShell section. That is another defense evasion, right? So we are trying to evade the defenses. Coming into the next slide. Further attempts to evade defenses. So it tried to first disable the features of Microsoft Defender. Now it is trying to play around with the firewall features, right? It is trying to stop the firewall. So here directly you can see that there is a command. You can see the entire command going on. What is being tried to done? It is trying to disable the firewall, and it is trying to make the current profile to off. So that is another defense evasion technique. So let's go through the chain. We created a user, secondary user. That user has privilege. Then you try to you try to disable the defender features. You try to disable the firewall features. Now, many of those countermeasure products on the endpoint, which ideally have to take some action, it is already disabled. Okay, let's assume it that way, right? Now we are getting into some kind of sophisticated masquerading things, okay? This particular masquerading, what you are seeing over here is called a double extension masquerading. Okay, now why I call this as a double extension masquerading is because if you see, it is trying to create a file masquerading.pdf.exe, or it is copying calculator and it is trying to create double extensions. So pdf.exe is basically a double extension over here. So that is one thing. We will talk on more about, one second, let me just see. We'll talk about the double extension a little more in the coming slide. So basically what we are trying to do is, it is hiding the true extension under a Benin extension. So PDF is Benin. A user ideally opens the PDF file, but the true extension, which is a malicious payload, the exe file or an SCR file or a DLL file, is basically hidden under the PDF document. So you can really get that visibility also, right? You can see a double extension masquerading over here, which is again a common practice what adversaries does. They can hide it under the TXT files, JPG files, document files, PDF files, you name it. The true extension is always hidden, right? So that is one thing which you see over here. Now, another thing what you can see over here, it is basically creating debug packages. Okay. Now you can see over here that one of the PowerShell command is creating a debug.exe file over here. Now, what is that basically doing is it is the debug.exe file is basically running some things, hidden things. Okay. Now, what are the hidden things? It is trying to capture running processes. It is trying to capture local groups. It is trying to capture local user and the registry configuration of that particular machine. So you can see that from the initial implant, where have we reached till now? It has opened multiple living of the land attacks over PowerShell. It is trying to create files to masquerade your defense and then try to do all these activities, which is typical and adversary thing, what you can see in any environments which are being infected actually, right? So again, your red team will also be performing these activities, similar activities. Yeah, so specifically coming into that debug.exe files, here you can see that what is being run. So when I click on those debug.exe file, I can see the command from my Carbon Black EDR. So it is trying to get the local group. It is trying to get the registry information. It is trying to get the local user. It is trying to get the running processes on the system. These are very important things for an adversary to have. They definitely need to have all this intelligence to perform their further steps. It can go from the defense evasion to exfiltration and all those stuff. So they need to have all this intelligence beforehand, before they perform their activities. Okay. Now, okay. Next, another very interesting thing. So you have already seen double extension. You have seen debug files being created from PowerShell. Now what you're going to see is abusing trusted Windows tools. Now this is getting scary. Your antivirus or a solution which is not capable to detect this would think everything is normal. But what is basically happening on this particular example is that it is using the run dll32.exe to call setup DLL or setup API.dll and to create a malicious INF file in a particular directory. Okay, so you are calling run DLL. So basically, it is a sub technique, okay, under the defensivation where legitimate signed Windows tools are used to copy and create malicious files. Now, here it is very tricky. If you don't have intelligence, it is a matter of time for them to do get into lateral movement and then exfiltrate and do all the harm for your organization. So the main thing is that you need to have tools which can really give you that visibility on what is happening. Just by having an endpoint protection tool with basic EDR will not suffice all these needs. You cannot get this visibility, right? So we are definitely getting visibility because of the superior capability of Carbon Black EDR, which is like the pioneer of EDR technology. And you are seeing a very, very scary technique over here, which has been used where a trusted Windows tool is used to create a malicious code. Okay, so this is getting serious over here. Now, why they use this is because when you're looking at so now run DLL32 is a signed binary from Microsoft. Okay, so it is signed, it is a trusted tool. No AV will think that it's bad binary actually, right? The AV or even a whitelisting tool will not definitely see. So what they are trying to use is they are trying to use this trusted tool to evade the defenses and run payloads basically, okay? Because if they create an unsigned file, your countermeasure solution, whichever solution you have, is going to trigger an alert and going to take an action. So they are relying on a signed file, which is a Windows tool, okay, a trusted Windows tool to carry on their activity. Things are really scary. Okay, now let's get into another thing. Copying lsas.exe. So lsas is a very, very known process, right? It is a Windows process. And what we are trying to do, what they are trying to do is that they are trying to copy a CMD using cmd.exe. They are trying to copy the lsas and make a copy of that. It is not the original lsas.exe. They are trying to rename a legitimate tool, okay, to look like it is a trusted system process. Again, another defensivation masquerading technique. This is all to evade the defenses, okay? Things are really scary in the real world. These things, what have been defined over here, we do have the visibility. We can say maybe more sophisticated things are under these defensivations, right? You never know. So, but as you can see, things are really scary. They can copy genuine processes. They can try to rename those processes, try to look good. They can call trusted Windows processes to make malicious payload. They can do double extensions, a lot of things. Okay. Now, once they do all the bad stuff, now it is the time for them to clear the history. Now you can use the fsutil Windows command tool, which basically manages advanced file system features to basically remove the NTFS file change journal. So once you remove the NTFS file change journal from the C drive, you're basically erasing your history. You're basically erasing you were there. Okay. So once they do all those things, they erase their entry by doing all these things. So we are also capturing this. We can see that's the fsutil. So you can see that command prompt was used to call the fsutil, and it tried to delete the NTFS file change journal on the C drive. Again, tampering with the Windows event log, very common thing what advisories basically does, where they try to play around with the Windows event log to, again, trick us, right? So that is another attempt which you can see. So you can clearly see there was a PowerShell call to clear the Windows event history. Okay, another thing what they does. Now, We have finished the techniques. So we have seen different kind of techniques what advisories basically use under the defensivation tactic. All these things I've tried to map it towards the MITRE context. Okay. Now we are going to get into the interface of carbon black solution. So first we will start with a new feature which we added onto carbon black enterprise EDR, which is a SaaS based EDR, which is called the threat tracer. Okay. Now I would like to define this in an old school way. If you see an EDR solution, the investigation tab of an EDR solution, where any interesting events you basically pull and drop and create your own investigation report. These are that was an old school type that is still being run on the on-premise EDR, but we have gone further ahead, creating a graphical representation for basically what will happen. So on the Carbon Black Cloud EDR, you are basically seeing all these alerts which was generated because of the activity which we performed, and this is exactly the threat tracer what you would be seeing. Okay, so you can see that there is a process, there is a 789.exe process, which is our implant. And when you click on this particular implant and right click on this, you can see, check whether there is a parent process. So you can see that PowerShell is a process, Explorer is a process. And then when you further right click and drill, you can basically see all the other living of the land attacks which was performed from PowerShell, including the commands actually. And you can also see if there is a network connection established to a command and control server. So you basically right click and say IP address information. So that will plot you an IP. So this is basically a pictorial graph what the SOC analyst can use. So here you can see there is an investigation tab and there is a threat tracer tab. So threat tracer is a very new feature. Maybe I would say like 4 or 5 months ago this came up. And maybe many of you in this webinar is aware about the new product which Broadcom is bringing up, which is called the Symantec CBX, where we will have the well-known prevention capabilities of Symantec and the well-known EDR capabilities of Carbon Black merged together to form a single product, a single agent, single management console. And you will see this particular feature also coming into CBX, Threat Tracer. So whatever is there good on Carbon Black and great on Symantec, we are going to combine this on a SaaS platform, which is called CBX. Okay, so you will come to know about that in the coming weeks, where we have presentations and marketing contents coming over it. Okay, so that is a threat tracer section which you saw on the Carbon Black Cloud, which would give you a graphical representation on basically what happened. If you click on the implant, you can exactly see it maps everything to that particular implant. Now here also you can see that I can see there are different child processes which are being created from that implant. Okay, so I can see PowerShell being opened, I can see LSAS being called, I can see FSUtil being called. So whatever you see on the Carbon Black enterprise EDR, which is SaaS solution, you ideally see everything on the on-premise solution also. So when I say on the feature parity side, yes, threat tracer is something which the Carbon Black enterprise EDR do have, which exactly what you're seeing on this slide, where you can get a pictorial representation and map everything together. This is something which the on-premise EDR does not have at this moment. I'm not sure whether this would come in the future releases, but there is definitely a discussion. So to enhance the solution. Okay. Now let's get into some remediation capabilities what Carbon Black EDR can basically offer, right? Now, when it comes to remediation capabilities, most of these remediation capabilities can be automated actually. If you have a source solution, you can automate most of this remediation capability. Now, in the first slide, what you see over here, we are trying to run something called a live query. Now, what is live query? Live query is very similar to OS query. If you know about OS querying, you basically ask question to the endpoint and you get results back from the endpoint. So in Carbon Black, what we are doing is we ask questions in SQL format. So if you see over here, select name, path, CMD, I'm asking questions in SQL format to understand the running processes on that particular machine. Now, if you try to map it with the initial slide which I showed you with the process ID of that implant 789.exe, when I run this live query, I can immediately see on this highlighted section there is a 789.exe implant which is running, and it got downloaded from this particular C2 server. Okay, and it is on the C users Danny public folder. Here you see you have this information. So isn't it good that from your EDI solution itself you have capability to list all the running processes on the endpoint, rather than depending on different Windows tool or other tools to get this information from the Carbon Black EDI server itself? You can run the list all processes task under the live query. There are multiple CAN queries which are already there available. If I'm not wrong, maybe around 40 plus are there. Some of them are, if you want to see the status of the firewall, you saw in one of the technique where the firewall was disabled. So I can try to run a live query onto that machine to see the status of my firewall. So that is another thing. List the processes, list the users. There are a lot of things, and you can create your own custom questions to the endpoint and get the results out of it. So here, when I ran the live query, I can immediately see that there is a malicious process, or a process which I really don't think needs to run on that particular machine. So I keep a note of that particular process, 789.exe. Now, next what I do is I can go ahead and terminate that particular process. Again, as I told you, all these things can be integrated with the SOAR for automated response capabilities. Here, in these steps, we are performing manual task. So I next take a live response onto that machine. So which means that I'm taking a secure connection onto that endpoint. And many of you, if you have already joined my previous webinars, you have understood about when I spoke about EDR, about the live response capability, where you can run different commands like collecting artifacts, collecting memory dump, or even running native operating system commands. Okay, so in this particular slide, what you're seeing over here is that I am running execfg, and I'm running a native operating system command, task kill /f/pid. So if you open your command prompt or a PowerShell, you run this particular command, it would execute, right? So I am trying to kill that particular process ID associated with our implant. And I can see that it is successfully being terminated. And when I come to my Caldera server, I can immediately see from an alive perspective, the status of the agent is now dead, which means that I've terminated the process. So I can do a response capability from within the Carbon Black EDR, applied to both on-premise and on the cloud. Same features across both the solution. Okay. Now I know 789.exe, which is my implant. I want to give it to my vendor for further analysis. So from my EDR tool, I really understand this is the initial implant, and I want to give this to the vendor for analysis, or maybe to my red team or to my blue team for analysis whatsoever. I can definitely do that. So that is what I said, to collect the artifact. I'm collecting the artifact 789.exe from that particular machine. For Carbon Black, Carbon Black records unbiased data, which means that everything happening on the machine in terms of process creations, in terms of network activity, registry modification, file modification, all these things are basically recorded. Now, in terms of on-premise EDR, we will be sizing the EDR as per your requirement, because we know that if you have log retention, like say kept for 60 days, some customers do that. Even though we say that it's 30 days better to have it, push all your logs to a SIM solution. Okay. Now we size it that way, and one of the database of Carbon Black EDR holds every newly seen binary in your environment. Okay, so when 789.exe was downloaded from my C2 server, I already have information. I already do have visibility about it. I've already taken a copy about that particular implant and I've stored in my database so that I can collect that particular artifact for further investigation. If I want to run forensics on that, I do have capability. So you can see that the live query, the live response, the artifact collection, and if there is a malware which basically ran from the memory and your vendor is maybe asking for a memory dump, you can definitely do it from the live response capability of Carbon Black EDR. So multiple things you can perform from here in terms of remediation actions, and most of these things can actually be automated. Okay, so another remediation action what you can know is, now I exactly know the implant from my process tree. I can click on 789.exe implant and I can directly put that into a ban. Okay, which means that that particular hash is banned, that process is blocked actually from performing further activities. It's same like your antivirus detected that particular file and quarantined it. I'm going to ban that particular file from doing any further activities actually. Okay, so that is another remediation capability what I can offer from Carbon Black EDR solution. Okay, now we will definitely get into a short demo. I will try to illustrate it through a demo on what I have done actually, and then towards the end we will keep a short period for question and answer. Okay, so let me jump onto my server. Just a quick second. Let's open up. Okay. I think so. I've lost. Okay. No. All right. So now this is the Caldera server, what I've used to do perform the red teaming activity. Okay. Now this is basically installed on an Ubuntu server, so you have to install it on Ubuntu server. There are a lot of YouTube videos which you have, which gives you help on those. Go ahead and install that on Ubuntu server. The default communication port is 8888. And once you have this deployed, as I told you, the first thing what you do is deploy the agent. So as I told you, when your machine goes into a sleep mode, or when it gets restarted, the status of the agent goes to dead. I have not created a script to keep that persistence. I'm planning to do that later. So you go to the deploy agent section, you come onto the agent, and I told you the standard agent is named as Sandcat. So when you select the Sandcat agent, you can select your platform, what you're going to deploy. So you come into the Windows platform over here, and you can immediately see that, as I told you, Splunk D is what the name is given. You can go ahead and rename it the way you want. And this is basically the PowerShell command which you can run to install the agent. So you basically copy this. You basically change the IP address to the Caldera server IP address, which will auto-populate the things over here. And then you can change the location where, if you don't want to get it installed on the public drive, you can go ahead and install it wherever you want. Rename the file, copy this file, go to the machine where you want to install the agent, run the PowerShell as an administrator, and paste this particular command, which will help you in installing the agent. Okay, so once you install the agent, the next thing what you do is you can either use default adversaries, which is already over here, or you can go ahead and create your custom adversary. So when you come into adversaries, if you select, so what adversary I've used over here is defense evasion. So now defense evasion here itself, you can see that all these things what you saw on my on that particular slide, on what all technique we ran, it is coming from this particular defense evasion adversary, okay, under Caldera. Now you want to go ahead and customize this, you have the capability. You want to go ahead and delete any of these things, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to add another ability, you have the capability to do that. So that's up to you. But for a webinar perspective, or a testing, or a efficacy testing purpose, or for generating logs for demos, whatsoever perspective, the default one is more than enough. I've run the default one. So once you have the adversary ready, either, as I said, either use the custom adversary or use the default one. Then you basically get into operations, where you are running these operation on an endpoint. So you can basically say demo operation, and then you come and select your adversary. So here I'm selecting the different, there are different adversaries. If you see, custom persistence is there, and on towards lateral movement is there, everything is there. Thief means you are almost towards the end stage where you are exfiltrating the data. If you want to do some worm kind of stuff. You can do that, exfiltrate and ransomware attacks. So many of the things are there. You can play around with that. But for this particular webinar, we have used defense evasion. Go ahead and select that. Leave everything as default. It's pretty good. And go ahead and start. Once you start that, it will be running all these advisories, all these tactics, okay? Sorry, all these techniques one by one. So it will finish the first one, get into the next one, and so on and so forth. And once everything is finished, is when you will have to get into your blue team tool to see what basically happened. So now coming back into the blue team tool, first I want to show you the on-premise EDR. So once I run these things, the first thing what I would see is I would see a hell of a lot of notifications coming on my EDR solution, and I come into the triad section. Sorry, let me just log in back. Okay, I come into the triad section, and in the triad section itself, I can immediately see that the defense evasion indicators are being shown up over here. So if I click on that particular PowerShell, that's where I have taken all the screenshots from. So I'm going into my implant 789.exe. It is there. So as I told you, first itself, when you see this implant, you can go ahead and ban the hash. I cannot go live on the machine because my machine is offline at the moment. I'm sorry for that. So once the machine is online, you can go ahead and do a go live onto the machine and perform your live response capability. So you can go ahead and do that. So you basically see that from 789, where it came from PowerShell. So when I see PowerShell, I click on 789.exe, I can immediately see that there was a call going into a C2 server to download that particular implant. And from there onwards, every nasty stuff what you have seen is basically being done actually. Now, these are the process tree, which we call actually. Now, if you want to see raw logs related to that, everything is basically available over here. So you can see the entire raw logs over here. If you want to see these, we call it as facets, which would dynamically get refreshed based on what I click. So if I want to see what are the fileless script load, so I can immediately see. So fileless script loads are basically commands which is run from PowerShell or CMD. You can actually see that commands, those commands through fileless script load. By default, this is disabled on the sensor group. So it is always recommended to go ahead and enable this as per the best practices. Okay. So based on what I want to see, what I'm interested, I can go ahead and do that. So if I want to see file modifications, I can go ahead and do that. On the top, you will see about the process, the machine. If you want to isolate the host to do your threat hunting or further forensics capability, you can definitely do that. So what does it do? It is similar to quarantining the machine, where that particular machine will only have access to the Carbon Black EDR server. All the remaining network connections are stopped except ARP, DNS, DHCP, ICMP, the basic protocols. All those things are allowed, but remaining the network communication is blocked, and then you only have the communication back to the Carbon Black EDR server to do your threat hunting or whatever activities. Now, coming back into the live query session, this is what I ran. This is about finding the processes. For example, I select a new query. If you can see over here, 13 plus 18 is 31, 51, 60 plus default queries are there. I can see the BitLocker configuration details, local administrator permissions, what is the physical disk details, and I can go ahead under threat hunting. I can see whether there is a list, what are the list of running processes. So for our example, I took this list of running processes, and you can also see if there is any scheduled task which is created. Another typical thing what advisories does for persistence. Okay, so to maintain that persistence, they create a scheduled task. Now, when I talk about the persistence, in the script, for you to have the Caldera agent to always have the persistence, there is a scheduled task which has to be created. So you basically create a scheduled task to always keep on running that particular process. So there is a script onto that. I also need to do my testing. I have not done it. Now, if you want to do your custom query, go ahead and run your custom query over here. So you have the capability to go ahead and create that. If you go to the query exchange page of Carbon Black, there are a lot of custom queries which is available, which can be used actually. So that is another thing what you can do. And I normally, as I told you, the old school way of doing investigation is on this investigation tab. So basically I create my investigation, and then what I can do is I can come to my alert triage, I click on one of those things, and then I come into my raw log. Okay, so let me click on this thing. Okay, let me come to the raw log, and for say I'm interested in this particular thing. Okay, I can see that this is a particular command for cross process where PowerShell called this particular process, and I am trying to add this to my investigation. So I can pick and choose what all is interested to me to add to that investigation, because maybe at a later stage you can share it with your management as a summary, right? You can do that. Now, what we have done on the Carbon Black Cloud is what I'm going to show now, right? So let me come back into the Carbon Black Cloud session. One second over here. Okay. I'm so sorry, I'm not using a secondary screen here. It's a bit messed up. Okay, so coming back into Carbon Black Cloud, let me just log in. Okay. So I will show you the threat tracer part thing, what basically you can do. So this is what I'm telling about threat tracer. So I can tell that this is a new version of investigation, which can give you a much better graphical image. So I can see the C89, which is my implant, and I can directly go ahead and right click on that, and I can get all these related information from as a graphical information for you. For example, if I click on the process user, I can immediately see that it's PowerShell. Okay, so there is a child process. Now, if I want to see something related to what do you say, unknown script loads, if there is a script load. So when you click on the relevant thing, you can immediately see that it has been running in the background. And if there is no results towards that, you get a zero results. Okay, so you will get a complete graphical representation on what you basically want through the threat tracer, which is already on Carbon Black Cloud, and this is something which would come on the CBX, Symantec CBX, which we are expecting a GA by sometime in August, if I'm not wrong. The time frame can change, but this is what we have, a high level information. Okay, so I hope the session was informative. You have understood it from an adversary or a red team perspective on what all things. As a red team, you basically check the efficacy of your defensive solutions. As an adversary, how you can evade all these defenses and you can get in and do all the bad stuff. You have seen in from one perspective, and on the other's perspective, what is the visibility what Carbon Black can basically offer to the customers when it comes to threat hunting and incident response. Okay, so with that, I come to the end. I will leave the last 5 minutes for Q&A. You can open up your mic if you have any questions over here. Anything to add, Kalman?
Thank you so much, Danny. We have got some questions on the chat box here. If there is a way to selectively remove Windows event log entries?
You mean to say selectively remove Windows log events?
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
You can customize like whatever things which I've actually shown you. Rather than clearing the entire Windows log, you can customize your script to do that. So you can create your adversary on your red team accordingly. It is totally customizable. So it is just going on the internet, understanding the exact script, and then putting it onto an adversary to perform your tasks. You don't have to necessarily use that particular tactic, what you say, so technique, what you saw over there. It is possible.
Perfect. So we have another question. If there is a treat tracker in on-prem version?
There is no threat tracer on on-prem version. So what you're seeing right now is only on the SaaS version. I don't know if this would come on the on-prem version. This is something I am also interested, but we have to wait and see. I feel this is something great to come on the on-premise product, which I'm also finger crossed. Let's see how it goes. But at the moment, no, it's only part of Carbon Black Cloud.
All right, thank you so much, Danny. We have another question for automatic resolution. You refer to integration into SOAR. Does the Carbon Black offering integrate with 40 SOAR? If so, how?
We don't specifically tell which vendor we will support for SOAR integration. Any well-known vendor, FortiSOAR also, there are a lot of customers using. Uh, any vendor who supports API integration is definitely a test ground for Carbon Black. You can go ahead and test that. We have built a solution on REST API. As a vendor, we don't have a SOAR solution, so we don't recommend, hey, you have to go with FortiSOAR or you have to go with Palo Alto or different SOAR. It's up to the customer. As long as an API integration can be achieved, as long as the things are properly integrated, it should definitely work.
Mhm. All right, so if there is a limit of the bad hashes that one can add.
Ban hashes, there is a limit. I'm not very sure on the number on how much it is there, but there is a limit. Let me check on this and get back to you. May I know who asked the question? Mike, can we
That's
take?
yeah.
Let's grab his email address. I will get back to him on that. But there is
Sure.
a limit on how many hashes we can add. Definitely.
Okay, perfect. All right, so also does ADR hash banning reflects to banning it in connected Carbon Black app control?
Good question. If you have that integration with Carbon Black App Control, so basically what you do is the integration with Carbon Black App Control, when you ban the hash from over here, that is not definitely going to reflected on App Control. Okay, because the App Control integration, when you see, I will not say it is a wow integration with Carbon Black EDR. You can from the Carbon Black App Control interface, you can see which all users have EDR agents running. You can see some file statistics, but any action which you perform on the EDR in terms of banning, it's not going to reflect on App Control. No, we don't have that integration.
Okay. All right, perfect. So that's all the questions that we have at the minute. All right, so yeah, we haven't received any more. Thank you so much, Danny, for such a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate it if you can if you can complete the short survey you will get after ending the session. And as mentioned, the session recording will be shared with you all. If you would like to explore further or schedule a demo, please reach us at any time at info@mbcom.com. Thank you so much for your time and look forward to welcome you in on the future session. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely day.
Thank you. Thank you, Ariel.